Gerald Celente is on the telephone to give us some straight talk about what is really going on in the world behind the scenes. Gerald is the founder of the Trends Research Institute, the author of the bestseller books Trends 2000 and Trend Tracking, and he's the publisher of the TrendsJournal newsletter. The website is TrendsResearch.com. Gerald, what's new?
Oh, what's new is what's old, and what's old is getting a lot worse. And as we look at the economy, and there's absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind that's alive and thinking that this is nothing more than a cover-up, that they keep the economy going. And I'm not making this up. It's quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and forever. And, of course, quantitative easing is white shoe boy language for printing digital money not worth the paper it's not printed on. And it's not only in the United States. The entire world economy is being held up, propped up, I should say. We're being held up. It's being propped up by the governments printing and debasing the value of their currency by printing more money. And you just had a new election, for example, in Japan. And what are the first words out of the new elected prime minister? Print more money. You look what's going on in China. Everybody knows that the Chinese economy is near collapse in terms of the housing bubble having burst. What's keeping it going? Dumping in more cheap money. Look what's going on in Europe with the head of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi. Oh, by the way, just a little coincidence, former vice chairman of the Goldman Sachs gang, European division. What's he doing? Unlimited money. Those are just about his words. They're going to keep it going forever, buying up all those worthless bonds and propping up the governments. But meanwhile, the economies are declining. As we speak, the people in Greece don't have enough money to buy heating oil this winter. There are crises going on in Spain, in Italy, in Portugal, in Ireland, where far too few have much too much and way too many have much too little. Same thing going on in Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, Bahrain. You go around the globe and you see these problems that are everywhere. So the only thing that they're doing is they're propping this all up. In the meanwhile, the world is heading toward the first great war of the 21st century.
Gerald, I want to get into this war that's coming, but do you think that while the central bankers of the world are artificially inflating the world economy, or I should say keeping the world economy running on artificial life support, are they secretly, privately laying the groundwork for a new system that they know will have to arise at some point because they are deliberately crashing the old system?
I believe they are. I believe they are devising a new system, and they are crashing the old system. And I believe that what we're going to see, by the way, I'm not in the camp. It's just, the outcome is the same, by the way. It's just different in the sense that there are a lot of people saying about rampant inflation. I look at it more as a debasement of the currency. So, for example, if you live in Zimbabwe and it takes you $1 million Zimbabwean dollars to buy a pound of coffee, the price of the commodity price of the pound of coffee hasn't gone up. The value of the currency has gone down. And that's what they did in the United States during the Great Depression, which, of course, your listeners know, but most people don't know. When they made the people turn in their gold, and gold, of course, in those days, the dollar was pegged to gold, and I believe it was about $22.60 or $20.62 an ounce, something like that. And when they made the people turn in all their gold on the penalty of going to jail and being fined twice the amount of the gold that they found on you, after they thought they got it all in, they raised the price of gold. They repegged it to $35 an ounce. So now you just lost 70% of your purchasing power. So the commodity price didn't go up. your value or your currency went down. And I believe that's what they're going to do, and I believe they're going to come up with a new reserve currency at some point in the not-too-distant future.
I do, too. Timothy Geithner, the outgoing Secretary of the Treasury, recently proposed that the U.S. government abolish the debt ceiling. And so literally what he's saying, Gerald, is, we have the Federal Reserve is now doing quantitative easing to infinity, so why not have deficit spending to infinity? Why have a debt ceiling? If you can print money endlessly, why worry with the formalities of raising the debt ceiling?
And you see, it's the attitude of these people. Do you think Timothy Geithner has ever worked a day in his life? This is one of these guys like the rest of them that have been born on third base and thought they hit a triple. They could care less about everyone else in this country suffering. Because if they gave a good damn, we would not have interest rates near zero. Here's a quaint thought for you. Remember the old days when they used to encourage people to save for a rainy day, and people used to retire by putting their money away into savings accounts? Now you put your money into a savings account, they should call it a depletion account because you're not getting paid any interest on your savings. This is hurting the working people. The people that have to earn a living, and they're barely earning a living, and they're keeping these interest rates down for one reason and one reason only, and that is to keep propping up the markets that are collapsing. And they're also forcing people that do have any money to speculate with it because you can't put it in the bank and get any return on your savings.
And if you put an investment in a segregated account thinking it's protected, you're only going to be shocked to find out that they've raided it and hauled off the money and got away with it.
And of course, I was one of those people that got hit with the MF Global scandal. And they raided my segregated account. And nobody does any time for it. The word justice, by the way, is misspelled. It's J-U-S-T-U-S, just us. When you have a guy like John the Slime Corzine, the former governor of New Jersey, former senator of New Jersey. Oh, and by the way, Rick, just coincidentally, the former head of Goldman Sachs gang. Oh, and by the way, the head of the Commodities Future Trading Commission that never called MF Global up on the carpet or instituted any heavy charges or fines on them. Gary Gensler. Oh, he wasn't working for Corzine when Corzine was running running Goldman Sachs, was he? Oh, yes, he was. Oh, and the law firm that our Attorney General, Eric Holder, was with, the White Shoe Boy law firm that he was with before he became Attorney General, that couldn't be the same law firm that's the law firm for MF Global, could it? And that couldn't be why they haven't brought him up on any charges, could it?
And just recently, in Great Britain, the governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, retired. Who replaced him? The governor of the Bank of Canada, a former Goldman Sachs executive.
Exactly. Oh, and by the way, they don't call them executives. I have to correct you.
Okay.
They're investment bankers. An investment banker is language that means you're on the inside of the deal and you're going to make a lot of money. Investment bankers. These are a bunch of gamblers that rigged the game, and the game is rigged. Look at gold prices. Gold prices have gone down since Bernanke recently announced they're going to increase the amount of bond purchases and treasury buying. They went down. They should have gone up. And people say, how can you say that gold is rigged? Hey, did you ever hear these 5 letters? L-I-B-O-R? LIBOR? Yeah, they were rigging interest rates. They're rigging interest rates. Hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of transactions An interest rate game was rigged, and everybody knew about it. The entire game is rigged.
Gerald, how are they suppressing the price of gold and silver?
To me, they're shorting it. They're shorting it in the Asian markets, particularly in the mornings when trading is thin. They have their guys in there, and they're just dumping into and putting in sell orders. And with the market, when you look at the gold market and consider the amount of transactions in it compared to other markets, it's not a really heavy market. So it doesn't take a lot to drive down the price, because the reason they're driving down the price is 100% clear. We just talked about how they're debasing the value of all the currencies, and everybody knows it. So they're debasing the value of the currency, so the price of gold and silver should be skyrocketing. That means everybody would be jumping out of the debased currencies and buying gold and silver for protection. They don't want that to happen, and that's why they're doing it.
Gerald, there's growing suspicion around the world that vast quantities of physical gold reserves are missing. A number of nations are starting to either demand repatriation of their gold if it's stored at the New York Federal Reserve or other banks around the world. Other nations are talking about sending auditors to those vaults to witness that the gold is there and to test its authenticity because of the tungsten scandal. Just recently in Great Britain, the Queen Mum was trotted out of Buckingham Palace and taken over to the Bank of England vault to see the gold. And to me, when I saw that story in the London papers, to me it said the bankers are really desperate right now. I mean, they're going to desperate measures to fight off the growing suspicion that they stole the gold.
Kenny, what a cheap act, huh?
I mean, they got to take the Queen out of the palace and say, "Hey, Queen, look, we've got some gold here."
Yeah, hey, Queenie, look at this. Oh, the Queen saw the gold. It must be there. Yeah. Another one of those families that never works a day in their lives. There's a free ride. But look at Germany. The German government, the Bundesbank, is supposed to be holding about 122 billion euros worth of gold. Now, even when you take it, even if they had it, 122 billion euros, that's chump change. That's not a lot of gold. And now, where is the gold? Now, remember, this is the Germans. You remember, I don't think they were our ally in World War II, but the Germans say that they're keeping all their gold in the French banks, the English banks, and the American banks. Oh, yeah, sure you are. You know, once upon a time, I mean, who would believe this baloney? And why even look to not finding their gold? Why won't they let we, the people, look at the gold and see if it's there in Fort Knox? How come we can't look at it? This is supposed to be a democracy, and I want to make this clear for everybody listening. America is no longer a democracy. The merger of state and corporate powers, by definition, and I don't want anybody telling me the definition is wrong. If you look it up, you'll find the fact. The definition is the merger of state and corporate power is fascism. And fascism in every vestige has come to America. Too big to fail. Who made that one up? Oh, I'll tell you who made it up. Another member of the Goldman Sachs gang. You remember Henry Frankenstein Paulson, the former Treasury Secretary under Bush, taking our money to give it to the Goldman Sachs gang, $13 billion worth for the bad bets they made with AIG. And what is that guy, being that it's Christmas time, Lloyd, I'm doing God's work, blank fine, just bought a $34 million house in the Hamptons, and we're giving our money to Bank America, Citigroup, as all these CEOs are making hundreds of millions of dollars. It's fascism. Go to the airport. Go get felt up. Go drive and have the police like Gestapo on every corner. Fascism has come to America, and if the people don't rise up and if they don't find the spirituality during this Christmas time and move it forward, we're going to go the way of every other fascist dictated country, and that is into war, death, and destruction.
Gerald, I understand that Harry Truman was the last president to be granted permission to go into Fort Knox and see the gold. I suspect John F. Kennedy was the last president that asked to go in.
Yeah, and he didn't make it, did he? Yeah, and of course, there's also the speculation of Kennedy having to make the dollar again transferable into a hard currency.
And that's what I'm referring to.
Yep.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about the Middle East. Right now, Russia has warships on the way to Syria. It looks like there's going to be an emergency evacuation of all Russians in Syria, possibly 20,000 Russians there. Obviously, the Russians think something is going to happen very soon. Weeks ago, the Western media was in a feeding frenzy of news stories about President Assad is thinking about using chemical weapons, and then the next day he's ordered the chemicals to be mixed, and then the third day it was they're loading them into the warheads, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and it stopped on the same day that Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov said, "We will not permit another Libya to happen in Syria." And then it got quiet. And Mr. Panetta said, Mr. Assad got the message. Well, I think Mr. Panetta got the message from the Kremlin, and they backed down. But all of a sudden, again, now the Russians are removing their people, so that tells me the Russians believe the West is going to go ahead with some type of invasion of Syria. Are you expecting a military intervention in Syria?
It's already happened. The military intervention has already happened. Where are they getting all these arms from? Oh, those wonderful democracies. The kingdoms of Kuwait, Qatar, Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, those lovely democracies. I get a kick out of all these people, particularly the women, that say, we should be in Afghanistan because, look what they're doing to the women over there, and it's right for us to be there. Hey, how about Saudi Arabia? You can't even drive over there. If you leave the country, they put a chip with you so your husband knows where you're going. I don't hear women beefing about that. Hey, don't say anything bad about the king. Kings are good. Talibans are bad. With a hypocrisy. They're arming these Islamic fundamentalists, the same one that Jimmy Carter began to arm to beat the Russians out of Afghanistan. The same ones they armed in Libya to overthrow Gaddafi are the same ones now that are destroying Syria. And you only hear about the Syrian when Syria does something and kills people, but you never hear about how these Islamists are slaughtering people throughout Syria, the Christians. And it's okay to kill Christians. It's all right. But, if you kill another religious group in Syria, then you're bad.
Well, you try to follow the madness of the news speak that the government and the media uses. And so they tell us that, Assad is bad. It's a regime. It has to be destroyed. And the rebels are fighting for democracy. And the U.S. and Britain and the West they're behind the rebels because the rebels want democracy in Syria. But what they don't tell us is the rebels are made up of a bunch of freaks like Al-Qaeda. And what Mr. Obama was doing in Benghazi was running guns and rockets up to Syria to give it to Al-Qaeda to fight Assad. But we've got to stop Assad from using those chemical weapons. And we've got to turn the country over to the rebels, but the rebels are Al-Qaeda. Gerald, this is insane.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's insane. And it began under Carter, continued under Reagan, escalated under George W. Bush, and now it's in high gear again under Obama. So this whole thing, the war is already there. The world is at war. People don't want to add it up. It's a civil war in Syria that's now spreading into Turkey and Lebanon and maybe Israel. There's a civil war raging in Libya thanks to that humanitarian mission that was initiated by our Nobel Peace Prize winning president that's destroyed the country, killed tens of thousands, that's now spreading into North Africa, particularly Mali. And now the same group of psychopaths, the Obamas, the Hollands from France and the Camerons, that are waging war around the world are now arming different groups in Mali as that civil war escalates. Again, that civil war occurring as a result of the breakup of Libya and all the arms flowing out.
Do you believe that World War III is actually on right now?
It's on. The first great war of the 21st century has begun. Look what's going on in Egypt. Look what's going on in Tunisia. Hey, don't talk about Bahrain. Can't say anything bad about there because they have an emir over there. Emirs are like kings. They're good. They're good guys too. These are the stooges that were put in place when England owned the property over there after the imperialists started breaking it up after World War I and World War II and putting these puppets in there, the Saudis and the rest of them. And so what's happening is you have a civil war in Bahrain. Of course, the Fifth Fleet is also based over there. You have Yemen is an all-out civil war. And then let's look at the other civil wars that they're not calling civil wars. Greece. It's class warfare over there. It's ready to break apart at any moment. Go to the news. Every day you're reading how the Greek people they don't even have heating oil.
And the Swiss army is preparing for war in Europe.
Because war is already there. It's class warfare. You have millions of indignados in Spain taking to the streets. You have unemployment rates. You have unemployment rates among the youth over 50% in Greece and Spain, and it's starting to hit those levels in Portugal and Italy. You have the official unemployment rate of adults in Spain and Greece at over 25%. And it's much higher than that. And then it's the same thing again in Italy, in Portugal, in Ireland. I was just in Ireland. I was in Ireland a year and a half ago, and I was there in October. What a difference! It was bad a year and a half ago. Every place you go in the most in the most bustling areas of the downtown in Dublin, to let, for sale, to let.
I was just recently on the internet looking at real estate in Dublin, just out of curiosity, and I saw a small house in downtown Dublin for sale for $11,000.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and then you see partially built buildings, just the ground broken, a couple of stories up, empty, cranes just dangling. There's a depression going on, and they're covering it up with this digital money. It's as obvious and clear to everyone. But again, just as our mind was taken off of all of the economic woes and the other problems in America with the tragedy in Newtown, the same will hold true when there's war, be it false flag or real. The flags will come out, the yellow ribbons will be tied around trees. The drums of war are already beating, and it's going to divert the people's minds, just as they did during the Great Depression, off the real problems to put them now into not financial problems, but problems of life and death, because that's what these psychopaths are leading us to. And now, I want to make this very clear that this is not just a lot of hot air that I'm yelling out here because I'm concerned about what's going on. In 2000, I was asked to come to VMI, Virginia Military Institute. Now remember, this is the same place where candidate Romney announced his foreign policy initiative, I was brought in as the keynote speaker to talk about new millennium warfare. This is in 2000. Generals on the panel, after I gave what new millennium warfare would look like, I drew the picture. I had written Trends 2000 a few years earlier. That was a big national bestseller in 16 different languages around the world, identifying what it would look like when the next war broke out, the next first great war. You know how they say the generals always fight the last war? And that's what they're doing now, these F-35s, that cost, what is that, $1 trillion it's going to cost us? This is going to be a world war of weapons of mass destruction. When I wrote Trends 2000, I front-loaded the book with the breakup of the former Soviet Union. And all of the weapons that were being sold on the black market, they couldn't find 100 suitcase-sized nukes. All of the biological warfare, all of the dirty bombs. Could you imagine? Think about Hurricane Sandy, how it devastated so much of New York. It was only a Category 1 hurricane, and New Jersey. Imagine if a dirty bomb goes off in Manhattan, some biological warfare in Atlanta, a suitcase-sized nuke in San Francisco. The entire country shuts down. And do you know the people that are making the decisions for us, that are leading us to this, are the same people that got us into that wonderful victory of a war called Iraq? That glorious 12-year war, the longest war in American history in Afghanistan, with no end in sight and only more dead bodies and spent money to count. And now they're taking us into Syria?
Gerald, a week or two ago, there was a simulated zombie attack exercise held in San Diego, California. In fact, Cindy McCain, the wife of Senator John McCain, was one of the speakers, and so was one of the former national intelligence directors. This was a pretty high-level event, a simulated zombie attack. Now, people laugh and they go, "Oh, you're not taking this serious." Okay, well, they spent several $1 million to have a simulated zombie attack. And this whole concept of zombie, outbreaks of zombieism, it's been circulating for the past year or so in various media outlets and communities. I know of one particular community that in West Virginia, in Martinsburg, the high schools held a zombie attack. It was first responders were there, and they were vaccinating any student who had been bitten by a zombie. They had city first responders there. And this was all part of the simulation, Have you been bitten by a zombie? You're going to be vaccinated. And when you talk to people about it, they just laugh and go, they're just having fun with this. No, they're spending millions of dollars doing these simulated events. I'm of the opinion, Gerald, that they are preparing for a biological war. And the only way to do the exercises is to make people laugh about it, because if they tell them what they're really getting ready to do, there would be absolute mass panic. But do you think we're on the edge of a biological war?
I agree with you 100%. Yes. Look, if your name was Assad, I'll turn it around. You be Obama and I'll be Assad. And you call me up and you say to me, Assad, I'm demanding that you step down. What I tell him back, you can't hear on this radio. But I tell you this. If I was Assad, I'd also say, let me tell you something, Junior. Yeah, you may bring me down and destroy my country, but I'm going to make sure life isn't worth living for you either. Because I have people planted all over your country. I have agents ready to act as soon as I'm overthrown.
That's the way I would think if I were in his shoes.
Exactly.
If you've watched, and I've said this many times on the program, if I were a Middle Eastern ruler and I've watched Saddam Hussein taken out and dangling from a rope, and I watched Gaddafi get a big knife up his behind, and he saw all these guys taken out. And I say, okay, I'm next. They're coming after me. If I had years to prepare for it, Gerald, I would be doing exactly what you just described. I would get my agents into the country that's attacking and then wait on them.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just common sense.
I know. And it's going to happen at some point. And the point is getting closer. And this is why we're saying this is what this next Trends Journal is about: war and peace. Because if we could, we're trend forecasters. We're in the catbird seat. We're watching the ship headed toward the iceberg, and we're screaming out, "Change course!" Because the course the sociopaths and psychopaths in chief are taking us on is going to destroy the country. It's going to sink the ship of state, and we're going to go down with it. And we have a plan. We're not just talking peace and oming for peace and, silence for peace and protesting for peace and marching for peace. We have the peace plan. And it's a peace plan that has worked before. These guys that call themselves presidents, prime ministers, and chancellors, and commanders-in-chief of this and that, if they're going to command it, they're going to lead the fight. That's our demand as we the people. So if Assad or Obama has a problem with Assad, or he had a problem with Gaddafi, listen, you two go straighten it out. Keep me out of your psycho trip. I'm a close combat martial artist, a second-degree black belt, and black belt trainer. If I call somebody out, I'll take them out. I don't send somebody to do my dirty work. If these guys are going to talk tough, then get tough or get out. And stop bringing all us civilians into the middle of your psycho trip. And also it's about money, it's about oil, and that's all it's ever really about, and power. So the warriors of the past, the Attilas, the Genghis Khans, and the George Washingtons. And George Washington was not a healthy man. He had no teeth. He suffered from various diseases. He led the charge. He was there with his troops. These big-mouth little chicken hawks, ready to send other people to go do their fighting and dying for them. If they have a problem, let them lead the charge, or shut up and get out. And I mean that. This isn't, oh, that's funny. No, and also, let's do a world leader face-off fight to the death. We'll put it on pay-per-view. We could balance the budget. Everybody would love to tune in to see Assad go after Obama, or Obama versus Ahmadinejad, or Netanyahu versus Ahmadinejad.
Okay, if the fight in the ring is Obama versus Putin, my money is on Putin.
My money's against Obama. The only thing Obama's tough is playing basketball and shooting pool.
Hey, Gerald, one last question. Several weeks ago, a business friend told me privately that a close friend of his who is in a high-level banking position told him that the biggest banks are preparing for a derivative panic in the first quarter of 2013. Now, he told me this information, and the very next day was the story that broke from CNET that McAfee Labs is warning that this Operation Blitzkrieg is going to be carried out by, quote, Russian hackers in the first quarter of 2013 against 30 of the biggest banks in America. Well, my first thought was when I saw the name Blitzkrieg, I thought that's not Russian. That's a Nazi term. So they're telling us who's going to do the attack, the Nazis, not the Russians. And I don't know if this is connected to the fact that the owner or the founder of McAfee, Mr. McAfee himself, was running for his life from Belize, accused of murder. I don't know if all this is connected, but have you heard anything about this so-called Operation Blitzkrieg plan for first quarter 2013?
Yeah, I have. But you never know about these things. But I really, matter of fact, one of the pieces in the Winter Trends Journal, that'll be out in a few weeks, is by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. Of course, was the former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan, and he's a contributor to the Trends Journal. And it's going to be on the derivatives and the bond bubble. This thing is ready to collapse. Once interest rates start going up, this whole thing goes, it unwinds. So will there be cyber? Yes, because as I said, these are the new millennium warfare tools. And that's what we're looking at. And that's just one of them. It's not only dirty bombs, it's cyber attacks. It's a different, again, the generals keep fighting the last war. So
are they anticipating a cyber attack in early 2013, or is it a cover for a financial crisis that is going to erupt?
Again, we don't know, and that's why I always hedge it with whether it's false flag or real. And so whether it's a false flag or real cyber attack, whether it's a false flag or real what they'll call a terror strike. You remember that, the Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened, but they make it look real. The Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction lie. So one after another. So we don't know if the cyber attack will be real or not. But also, cyber war is also one of the top trends for 2013 that we're writing about.
All right. And our listeners can read it for themselves in the upcoming edition of the Trends Journal. You can become a subscriber at TrendsResearch.com. And it's an excellent publication. Gerald, as always, pleasure to have you on the program.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.